We're snorting cap rates and shooting up cash flow here at Deal Junkies.
Welcome back to Deal Junkies. I am Dane McKinney, your host here with Trevor Howard, Mike Nuss, and our very, very special guest, Tom Cruz.
From Top Gun. Let's go.
There you go.
That is his legal name. Yeah, we're stoked to have you. So Tom started investing like full time, it sounds like, back in 2017. He's got 821 as of this week, Section 8 rentals all through the Midwest, I guess you'd call it. I don't know.
South and Southeast.
And Southeast? Okay. Tom's based out of Miami. He's investing all virtually, it sounds like. I don't know that you're near any of the houses that you own. And then you graduated from North Carolina, but you're originally from Rio de Janeiro.
Correct.
There we go. Do you ever make it back to Rio?
Brazil. I went for the World Cup in 2014. That was the last time I went. I have family there, but I just don't make it down there too often.
Gotcha.
To give people listening context too, I think you talk about this online, but like, what's your cash flow number at? Because I think the most impressive thing is just the cash flow stream you've built from this whole thing you've been doing.
Yeah, I net about 1.3 million per month right now.
Yeah, which is insane. Especially when you're thinking, because these are what, $100,000-ish houses or so, like.
I would say between 75 to 125,000 is the typical buy box.
Yeah, so you've built, like, when we talk about Midwest, everyone we know that's gone there has not been successful doing it, has hated it, and then you've just built this crazy machine that produces an insane amount of cash flow. So, like, I'm really excited to hear how you even learned about doing that and how you really scaled it, because you built an insane system and you live the life that, you know, everyone dreams of living.
Of course.
Of course. But yeah, how'd you even think to invest into Section 8 and get started with that?
And it was a complete accident. After I started wholesaling, I knew that I didn't want to do wholesaling full time. I mean, it was very active. I was in the weeds, driving for dollars, making offers, negotiating with sellers. People were pissed off. It just not a fun business to be in. I hated doing it. So eventually I got a condo. I actually got a condo to live in after I graduated from college. At the time I was wholesaling, and I also had a marketing side hustle at the time, and bought the condo, lived in it, bought a dog, bought a big Doberman Pinscher, and the HOA said I couldn't have them, so I wasn't gonna get rid of them. Ended up renting out the unit, and that was kind of where I got my first aha moment, like, hey, I can make $500-600 more than the mortgage by simply owning property. And then from there, I bought more condos. I reinvested the rent from that property. I went ahead and reinvested the cash flow from my marketing business and continued wholesaling, bought my second, bought my third. Eventually realized that HOAs and in condos were kind of a joke, and I didn't want tenants having tenant complaints and dealing with assessments and all the shit that comes with HOAs. So eventually I got into single family. That's when I kind of started Airbnbs. I had several Airbnbs. All of this was just funded through either seller financing, try to find deals with low down payments. I would take property subject to, I would do loan assumptions, I would do DSCR loans. I did first time home buyer loans that I should have lived in, that I never lived in. I did, anything to make, by any means necessary was really my strategy. And that's kind of where I eventually landed into Section 8. I was like, man, the Airbnbs are $200,000. There's no way I can keep coming up with 20% down for this. Like, it was taking me 6 months to buy a property. So I was like, fuck it. Let me just try to go buy like some $60,000 shit box and let's just see what happens. And I found one. It was in Gores Row, Wilmington, North Carolina. And it was not a place you want to be during the day, during the night, really any time of day you didn't want to be there. But it was cheap. I think I bought it for like $60K, $65K. It was rented really well to an elderly couple. And the day after I closed on it, that's when I discovered it was Section 8. The seller never told me it was Section 8 during the due diligence. I never asked. He showed me a rent roll. He showed me deposits. Like, that was really, I saw the wired amount, and he always kind of kept it kind of vague. So when I closed, he was like, hey, we need to switch you to direct deposit. By the way, your annual inspection's next month. I was like, motherfucker. And that's how I discovered about Section 8, and I had every misconception that a lot of people do. Oh, shitty tenants. Oh, you're going to have your property wrecked. But these people were like fossils. They're probably like 85 years old living in there. They'd been on Section 8 for 15, 20 years. And they were super cool. I physically went and personally met with them. They showed me their voucher. The rent hadn't been increased because the landlord didn't know how to increase rents. I increased the rent during the recertification period. I think I took it from 1350 to like 1475. And yeah, and that was kind of my intro to Section 8. And at that time, I had condos that were non-Section 8. And I was like, man, and I had every excuse in the book from those condo tenants, like, oh my God, I needed to do this with my car broke, I can't afford the rent, blah, 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 give me an extra few weeks. So I was dealing with that directly. I was self-managing like an idiot for my first probably 25 units. So anyways, that's long story short, that's how I eventually fell into Section 8.
So that first Section 8 one, were you buying it all cash just because it was cheap enough and then like refinancing it, or you seller carried that?
No. That one was, I used State Employees Credit Union. So my dad worked for the state. He worked in Carolina. So I had access to a credit union, and they did, I think, an 85% loan to value they didn't have a loan minimum because it was a credit union, and it was an investment property, and they let me have 10 of them. So I think I put on that 60K, I put like 12 or 13K down. I financed, I think, 48 or 47,000 bucks, had a $500 a month payment on it, and tax and insurance were a joke. I think it's 1% millage in New Hanover County, and insurance I think was $800 per year, and the rent was like almost $1,500. So I stopped playing with the little 1% rule that a lot of people play with, and I was looking at 2% rule, on those deals.
Yeah, that's insane because you're cash flowing like all your down payment back within like a year, so super scalable.
And that was the main focus. And obviously that was just a really good, introduction to it. Since then I've made every mistake in the book, as far as tenant selection, property selection. Eventually I, brought on partners and really used partners to scale. But yeah, I mean, that was how it started.
Yeah, because I think I'm most interested in like how you scale, because you have a similar story to a lot of people. You're just doing a bunch of random deals, getting your hands on whatever you can. But like where it's impressive with you is you really dialed in the system to scale to this cash flow number and figured it out. So like, was that raising money from people or just that cash flowed heavy enough? Like, how did you actually build that scale?
It was a combination of a few things. I discovered early on that a lot of the things that were already in the property were not required by Section 8. This is very controversial. People get very irate whenever I mention this stuff, but it's a reality. I do it in every single one of my properties. For example, food disposals, not required. Washer and dryers, not required. Ceiling fans, not required. Anything that wasn't required by the Federal Housing Authority and Section and HUD, I just would charge as a luxury amenity if the tenants wanted it. Landscaping, not required, but I was able to charge for it. Obviously, I didn't want code enforcement, so the tenants obviously it would be part of the lease. I would stipulate that. So that was one way that I was able to get a $1,400 rent to $1,550 or $1,600 per month. And obviously that compounds over time. Eventually I got into partners. I met a lot of my partners at Cars and Coffee. I went to a lot of like interest-based events. I love cars. I talked to the guys with the most expensive cars there, invited them to lunch, brought them deals, explained like, hey man, I had a BMW like M3 at the time or something, like more basic. And I talked to the guys with Ferraris and I was like, hey, I'm trying to buy these 20 deals in North Carolina. Here's my 7 deals that I already own. Like, do you want to discuss this? And I can kind of show you my P&Ls and I can show you my cash flow, and it's guaranteed income. So it's not a very hard sell to raise money when the income's guaranteed and you have a track record. So that was always my goal, was to buy as many as I could by myself to be able to show to other people that I knew what I was doing. So yeah, and then from there, got one partner. We bought 10, 20 properties. Bought them out either through a cash out refinance or just through cash flow, and then just kept rinsing and repeating.
Yeah, and that's only like a 150 grand or something then you have to get from a partner to go buy 10 of those. So it's pretty easy check then for a lot of those people to write.
Exactly. And then in 2018, I did one of my larger acquisitions. It was 92 units for $6 million, and the partner brought 1.2 million. And, we were able to the properties were all vacant. A lot of them were, under rented. So when you take a portfolio of 92 units that was doing 50,000 a month, and you take it up to, I think we got it to like 120, 130,000 a month, you just force appreciation through the rent roll. We don't remodel. I don't rehab. I only buy turnkey or get the property, to pass inspection. I don't do any type of major rehab or dealing with contractors or any of that stuff.
Yeah. So it sounds like it's a crazy amount of cash flow you're able to generate with not that much work, it sounds like. So like, why are more people, are you really good at finding these deals, or like what's the differentiator of why more people aren't just doing what you're doing?
It's ignorance. It's just, and then also there is more work than a regular rental. You have inspections annually. You have inspections before the tenant moves in. You have paperwork before the tenant moves in. For every 20 tenants, the 15 tenants that I screen, maybe one of them will qualify. We have very rigorous screening. That's why we don't have a bunch of shitty tenants. We look for elderly. We look for people without dependents. We look with people without pets. I also don't rent to tenants with Androids. We find that they get evicted exponentially more than iOS users.
Can you speak to that more? Because that's one of your videos that we laugh at. Is you made a pretty viral video about how that's one of your screening questions.
Yeah, and that's not really a gimmick. It's not even a screening question. We send all the applications through text, so we know if it comes back green or blue bubble. We have right now 3,600 people living in 821 properties in 4 states and 7 municipalities. So we've evicted hundreds of people over the better part of the last decade. So we know from a pattern that who gets evicted at a much higher rate. And since we stopped accepting Android users, our eviction rate's gone to basically less than 1%.
That's a crazy statistic. Yeah.
We find that they have lower income. We find that they have lower credit scores. They're higher chance of being previously evicted. Just having that device is like the #1 screening criteria. If they come back as a green application, we won't even send them the next screening for them to pay for the application. The pre-screen is that it?
Yeah, that's crazy to us being in Oregon because we just have such like heavy tenant rights. Yeah.
I also don't buy in places that have that nonsense. I mean, right now by God, North Carolina, for $150 in 2 weeks, I can put a tenant on the street and replace it. So that's what we do. We find states that are very landlord friendly, low property tax, low insurance, that have, low, not a ton of natural disasters. I'm not buying in Miami because of hurricanes. I don't buy in places that are flood zones, wind and hail, all that other stuff that just cuts into cash flow. So it's buying in the right places, putting the right tenants, and then getting the right property managers.
You step back and go into, first off, kudos to you to help removing the stigma. It's ridiculous how much stigma keeps people from being effective in this world. That's one thing I've appreciated from watching some of your videos is that's very, very clear is just your, thank you for doing that. But going back to your momentum, so you had your marketing company, you had your wholesaling company. When you were getting started, were you doing direct mail, essentially moving your marketing to direct to seller to essentially act like a wholesaler, but then go past the wholesale and buy them yourself? Can you kind of talk about that?
Yeah, I did both. I didn't do direct mailers or a lot of the grassroots type of marketing. I did a lot of Facebook ads early on. I would put $500 or $1,000 into Facebook. Keep in mind, this is 2013, 15, 14. Like ads were exponentially cheaper back then for wholesaling. So I just stole, those We Buy Ugly House billboards. I don't know if you've ever seen those before.
Yeah.
As far as like the massive wholesalers. I just took that and put a digital format, and then I would just have a very simple, I think it was Typeform I was using, I forgot the platform that I was using, but basically just a form they would fill out if they had a property for sale. And then from there, I would reach out personally. I mean, I was all doing this by myself. This is a one-man show. And a lot of it was local. So I would be driving for dollars. I literally had Deal Machine. I don't know if you guys heard of that. The app that allows you to that was my, go-to source of truth. I would take pictures. I would do the postcards, I guess. I guess that is direct mail, but I never did my own separate mail campaigns. And I would reach out. I did it more old school. I would save the addresses in a spreadsheet and then reach out and just let them know, hey, I saw this property. But I was doing the due diligence on each deal. I was making offers, looking at the ARVs. So, I mean, I was in the trenches for the first few years of wholesaling. And eventually, so once I had more cash flow and was able to basically wholesale the deals to myself, that was an opportunity as well. And I did a lot of seller financing, a lot of more creative financing because I wasn't able to put 20% down on every property. I started with less than 15K.
And that's what I think a lot of people refuse to acknowledge is that you spent a ton of time, years, turning yourself into a huge magnet. So then when you go to the cars and coffee, you've got a portfolio, you've got a track record, you have P&Ls, you have cash flow. More importantly, people will then probably see you and say, wow, this investment's half of the cost of my car. I trust this guy. I like this guy. And then you can then gain that next wave of momentum. Does that sound kind of correct?
And that's exactly right. And I did it completely by accident. This was not some big mastermind theme. I mean, like I said, I self-managed for the first 20-some properties. It should have been the first property. I should have gotten a property manager. That was a huge mistake that I made. Buying by myself with my own cash flow for as long as I did, another big mistake before I ever sought out any type of investors. which looking hindsight, it looks like a genius. Like, oh, he set up a track record and he leveraged, OPM, and it looks like, oh my God, a mastermind. But at the time, I had no idea what I was doing. I just knew that I wanted to get units. I was doing cash advances on Visa, Wells Fargo credit cards to get down payments because I wasn't able to wholesale enough deals to get the down payment on my first rental. So like, but I was just doing it by any means necessary. Very shady, very gray area at sometimes, but it worked out.
So how many deals were you having to look at to find one that like met your criteria? Because to me, it just sounds like every property there kind of works, but I'm assuming that's not the case.
Are we talking about for wholesaling?
No, for owning that hit your cash flow metrics. You want to buy this deal. Like how many are you actually like analyzing and looking at till you get one?
Like back then or now?
Both. Yeah.
Okay. Back then, I was a lot more conservative. I was looking at a lot more deals. I couldn't tell you exactly how many. I mean, I was in North Carolina, so it wasn't a huge market in a lot of those cities. If I had to throw a number out, probably 40 deals to every one that I would put under contract. And that was mainly because of condition. The thing I was most concerned about was from the beginning, I hate dealing with contractors and subcontractors. I didn't want to do any remodel. I completely reject the whole sham of a strategy that is BRRRR. I didn't want to refinance right off the bat. I didn't want to have to rent out my property that I just spent tens of thousands of dollars remodeling. I didn't want to spend months of time remodeling. So it was the main filter for me was condition. I was fine making $300 per month and, then eventually getting more cash flow as rents increase, as appreciation. So I was a lot more conservative at the beginning, but now I don't give a fuck. I buy cash. I buy properties that, need $3,000 to $5,000 and just minor repairs to get it to pass Section 8 inspection. I close in 3 to 5 days. I have no contingencies. So I'm able to move a lot faster now because I have the cash flow to support that. But at the beginning, it was much more grassroots. It was a lot more methodical.
Yeah, because now you have the problem of you have too much cash flow. You have to spend it on something. So you're just buying all cash on properties. And you're paying down a lot of your portfolio now, aren't you?
The majority of my portfolio is paid off.
Okay. What's your thought process there, rather than re-leveraging it and scaling more and buying more?
I found that I wanted to build a lifestyle business. I don't want thousands of units. I don't want to become a billionaire. I like having almost zero involvement in the day-to-day management. I like having a limited number of property management and being able to focus on quality and less debt versus going out and just mortgaging myself to the tits and getting 3,000 units and then selling to some big institutional investor. Right now, the cash flow is consistent. There's virtually no debt on the property, on the properties, and my properties are all in great shape. Like I said, we buy these properties that are basically turnkey or move-in ready or close to it. We screen very aggressively. I mean, my property managers are going to the old house that the tenants lived in to see how they were living before they move into my property. That's how hardcore we get with screening. So we have tenants that are going to be there for years. So even if I sold my portfolio, I wouldn't sell it as a portfolio. I would probably take a few years, peel off 10 houses per month and sell them over, multi-year frame. But yeah, that's kind of my philosophy.
How close together are because you said you're all over different states and 7 municipalities. Like how many property managers do you have? Like how tight is your portfolio?
I have 10 full-time right now. Okay. And I started in Wilmington, North Carolina, because that's where I went to school in North Carolina. And then I expanded in South Carolina and other parts of the Midwest. But it was very tight in Wilmington because I would get to the point where I'd be able to buy like a full block. Mm-hmm. I would just go, step by step sometimes there'll be like 8 or 9 houses on a block and I would be able to buy 5 from one seller. And then I'd be like, man, it's super convenient because my property manager can go there and change out all 5 air filters all at once. And so my whole goal was then to start buying, city blocks in downtown.
When you say 10 property managers, are those third party or those in-house property managers?
Those are in-house.
Yeah.
So I started with third party property managers, and for the most part, they're just shit. I mean, they're good if you have a few properties, but third party property managers have no incentive to take care of your property or really care about it. They make 10% on a $1,500 rent, $150. And if they have me as a client and I bring them 500 units, they're not going to give a fuck about your 4 houses. So they're going to give me priority on the tenants. It's really, the biggest portfolio wins with a third party. So I learned that pretty early on when my property would sit vacant for, a month or two or they had some bullshit eviction policies and they would listen to every sob story and give them a month to live there. No, for me, it's due on the first. If I don't care if their $35 portion is not paid on the first, we'll put a late fee on the 5th, and on the 15th, it's an eviction on the door. And we just don't care because we have enough cash flow to offset the vacancy. And then also what that tells everybody is like, if I buy dozens of units in the same zip code, right? So people talk. These are not massive municipalities that I'm buying in. And the last thing you want is, oh, Tom's property manager is going to let you have an extra couple months. So once the reputation comes around that you enforce your own lease, it really, everyone kind of falls into line. But yeah, it's all in-house managers now.
Can you speak to like how your lifestyle has changed as you've grown your portfolio too? Because again, like a lot of people see where you're at now and think it's the coolest thing and want to get there.
Yeah.
But
it was definitely gradual at the beginning, and I try not to overextend myself because I understand the concept of lifestyle creep, and it will fuck you so fast and retard your ability to really grow wealth. So I would say early on, I was living in that condo probably 6 months, and then I ended up getting a smaller single family residence, and I lived there for a few years, even after I had over 100 units. And then eventually I got my first like nice house in Wilmington, North Carolina. This is probably well into 2019, 2020 when I'm already started Section 8, lived there for 3 years, and then I moved to Miami and got a condo in Miami in 2023. So it was all 3 to 4 years between each step. But after 2020, after COVID, and people were stuck in their properties and they couldn't move out, and there was no turnover, and I was buying, left and right from 2020 to present. It escalated quickly. I went from $1 million house in Wilmington, North Carolina, right before I moved to Miami. Then I went to a Brickell penthouse because that's every Miami dude starter kit, and then a real penthouse at SLS Lux. And then I got sick of condo life, so I found a house, and that could accommodate 15 cars and a 100-foot boat. And then I eventually moved into that. Actually, seller financed this property originally from the seller.
oh, no way.
I refinanced it with the bank. Yeah. So that's been kind of the trajectory was, condo, single family, nicer single family, nice penthouse in Miami, and then kind of where I'm at now.
Yeah. So I know you said you don't want to be a billionaire, but what's your goal? Like, what are you trying to go to now?
Man, I think $2 million a month would be cool. I do about 1.3 million right now with Section 8. I do another 150,000 a month with education and software. So I'm probably netting around 1.45 to 1.5 per month. The only difference that would materially change in my life is I would have a bigger boat and I'd be on Indian Creek in Miami next to, Jeff Bezos or Tom Brady. That would really be the only thing that would really change in my life. I could have a plane right now if I wanted one. I could have a bigger boat if I wanted one, but it's like, to what end? Right now, I enjoy traveling. I enjoy, having no stress. I enjoy just, nobody in my family has a mortgage. Nobody in my family has a car payment. Everyone's taken care of. It's just a situation where it's just like, I wake up every morning and I just say to myself, don't fuck this up. I don't take on any more debt. I don't, over leverage myself. I don't go doing crazy lifestyle creep. I guess I could say I got complacent, I got comfortable, and I'm just kind of building the portfolio just to keep things fresh and just to kind of keep growing so I'm not dying. But I'm not buying 100 properties per month now. I'm buying 5 to 7.
Yeah.
I don't think I would call you complacent.
Yeah.
I understand the sentiment, though.
Well, he can answer, like you asked the question why. So you talked about leverage. My first thought process is why? What's the entire point of that, right? And so you're kind of answering the question of what is enough as you're scaling and getting through all that is what it sounds like.
Yeah, I think it really hit home for me when I bought my last Rolls Royce and I ordered it and it showed up to the dealership and it took me over a month to go pick it up. I just really didn't care. It didn't move the happiness needle too much for me. It was cool. It was something that I ordered and I enjoyed, but it wasn't even urgent enough for me to stop wake surfing every day to go to the dealership 5 miles away to go pick it up. So it's just stuff like that. And obviously I realized material stuff doesn't necessarily make you happy. It's fun, it's enjoying, and it's like this boat would be the last thing I get rid of. Like, I enjoy that boat every single weekend with family and friends. But I think it's just a lot more, the freedom and the peace of mind is worth way more than any sum of money.
Yeah. Do you have a wife or kids or anything?
No, have a long-term girlfriend right now and eventual wife.
Okay. Right on. So I've when I made my first million when I was 24, 25, I realized the same thing you did is I thought this would change my life. And then you feel nothing. Have you felt that at every step along the way? 'Cause you're so far ahead of everyone else? It's just the same thing over and over again.
I didn't have that same sentiment early on. I thought when I hit like 1 million or saw 1 million in my account, I was like, holy fuck, like this is crazy. And then I bought a Lambo immediately. And but I'm also a huge car enthusiast. So like for me, that was awesome. Like I grew up going to Miami and going on Collins and seeing everyone, you know, flex down Collins and how sick that would be. So like that was always my aspiration. Like even when I was in Wilmington, you know, I would go to the Porsche dealership at 2:00 in the morning, like just drooling over GT3 RSs and just like, how many houses do I need to get one of these fuckers? So I would say cars and lifestyle was definitely motivation, you know, as I was going through my Section 8 journey. Obviously, I've had over 90 cars since I was 18. So I've had a little bit of everything. So the cars don't really get me going anymore. I think like giving my family cars and friends cars is a lot more fun than me receiving a car. But yeah, I mean, I would say that receiving probably died down a few years ago, like realistically. I mean, it would have to be something really, really special to kind of get me like excited right now.
Yeah. And the areas you're looking at, have you looked into just buying apartments too, like going and buying a 100-unit complex and putting it all in Section 8?
No. The last thing you want to do is create the projects. The last thing you want is a homogenized community of all people that are entitlement programs living on top of each other. It just causes a lot of problems. You don't want to deal with the stress of their complaints. You don't want to deal with the stress of having on-site property managers, of having to deal with parking lots and amenities and massive roofs and insurance. It just becomes a huge nightmare. The police, you got to deal with police and actions that happen when you're just inherently dealing with low-income people all living on top of each other. Misery breeds misery, and there's no better place to go to any government housing projects, and you'll see, you know, what that's like. And there's just no way to avoid that. So in theory, it sounds great. Oh yeah, you get a higher cap rate, and the cash on cash is great, and you only have one roof, and you can, you know, take all of that, but you don't get the same appreciation. Single family is a much more demand. Section 8 pays more on single family properties. It's just every single advantage and benefit to single family, besides maybe scale of maintenance. But even then, it's still not as big of a deal. My property managers are maybe at the max driving 30 minutes, 45 minutes to go look at a property. So it's not like they're sprawling across, you know, DFW or anything crazy.
Yeah. And how have you seen your properties appreciate? Because people in the coastal markets always talk about the Midwest and be like, yeah, you can have higher cash flow, but you don't see appreciation. And that's what a lot of people say. But what have you found?
Yeah, I mean, early on, I definitely got lucky. There's no way around it. I happened to pick a school at the University of North Carolina at Wilmington that in 2010, 2011 to 2015, 16, had a bunch of low-end housing, and it happened to be now one of the most desirable cities in the country to move to. It's a huge tourist destination. It's basically like Charleston 2.0. It's grown crazy. The gentrification's been insane. And a lot of my properties have appreciated significantly. I'm talking like 3 to 4x. I've bought properties that I bought for $60K in 2015 that are now, you know, selling for $240, $250, because everybody wants to go and flip there and everybody wants to make a bunch of money. I have sold some of those to first-time home buyers. I've sold them to, you know, even investors that would pay full retail, because then for every property that I sold there, I can go to the Midwest and buy 5 or 6. My thing's always been cash flow. Like when I was buying these properties at Wilmington, I never had in my mind, holy shit, this town is going to blow up and become a tourist, you know, and retirement haven, and all these properties are going to 4x in value. My mindset was like, fuck, I just bought this house in 2017 for 80 grand, where some clown in 2009 bought it for 25K, and now, you know, he's making a bunch of money off me. So I was like, okay, well, I gotta just, you know, bite the bullet. So now fast forward, now there's clowns buying properties from me for $250,000 and be like, fuck, this guy got it for 80. So it always goes that way, you know. So
well, going back to your journey in your condos, you still have your Dobie? Is he still alive? And then how long did it take for you to convert those Airbnbs into Section 8?
Yeah, no, my dog died 2 years ago.
Sorry to hear that.
Put him down. He was old as shit. It's okay. He was like 16. Like
that's a great life for Adobe.
But yeah. So he died. He was living with my parents actually towards the end. But the Airbnb stuff actually sold because I realized that if I could sell those properties, I could buy a lot more of the cheaper properties, like I discovered on Gores Row and by God, Wilmington, North Carolina. So that was my strategy. I sold them. I had some gain just from they were already set up as like short-term rentals, and other, Airbnb guys bought them, and then I converted them all to Section 8. All my condos, I had not I didn't renew any of the leases and put all Section 8 tenants in there. And then eventually I sold all the condos. I don't own any more condos now. Just because it's very variable. Like, I would have a special assessment of 20 grand that would be divided by the, 8 condo people. And it's like, well, I just ate up like, a quarter of my cash flow for the year. So I just avoided doing that altogether. But yeah, I don't have any of those other types of units.
What was the biggest friction point, I guess, in terms of scaling the portfolio? Because you talk about like the acquisition side, then the management side, then the fundraising side, and like we all deal with all of that in real estate. And so specific to Section 8, like what was the thing that made you different? Or I guess just like once you figured it out, it was like, oh, I can unlock another 200. I can double my portfolio next year now.
I think it was really being creative with the inspections. That's really the big unknown when you're dealing with regular properties versus Section 8, is the inspections. And I realized that we had to master that very early on. These inspectors are getting paid 40 grand a year. They hate their life, and they're generally miserable, and they'll make your life miserable if you don't treat them right. So that was one of the first things that we kind of unlocked. I had all my property managers go out to every single inspection with the handyman, and basically just bow down to them. We would bring his ass donuts, breakfast. We'd bring them gift cards for their family to Ruth Chris. We'd have Christmas gifts every single year for these people. And it got to the point, man, where it'd be like, we go there, my property manager and my handyman would go to the property, and the inspector would be like, hey, we have algae growth on the exterior that's going to be power washed. And normally you would have to then sit and wait for a week or two before you can come back out and re-inspect. But our relationship was so strong, my handyman would go out, get a power washer, power wash it that day, take a picture, send it to his cell phone, and he mark it as past inspection that day. So we never lost 2 weeks of rent, or we never went to abatement. So it was just like little hacks like that compound so quickly, whereas most people don't give a fuck about these guys, and then they complain and bitch at them, and because they don't know how to follow a checklist and make sure their properties pass inspection. So taking care of inspectors, making sure they're on your side. I would say 90 to 95% of inspection items could be fixed on the spot. So as he was doing the inspection, my handyman would be going behind him and fixing stuff, and things like that. The second thing is just tenant selection. Early on, I realized that it's way better to have a vacant property than to have a shitty tenant. And it's not always that easy to just, say that. It's because I'm super rich right now, I can say that. But at the time, when someone comes and waves $2,000 as security deposit in your face, and you have an upcoming, and also first and last month's rent, you're like, fuck, let me just take this, their background check's good enough. And then they turn out to be like drug dealing out of your property, and you have police, and it's just like, man, this was not worth the eviction or the headache. So I realized that it was way better to leave that vacant, pay the mortgage for a couple months out of pocket, and get the right tenant in there. And then over time, I just figured out how to screen them. Then we came up with our criterias. Then we would look at patterns. I, looked at all the data. Now with AI, it's super easy. We put our entire rent roll in there. We put all the tenant demographics that we have on them in there, and we find out very quickly, like, who's good, who has the probability of churning, who's not going to renew their lease. I also forced a lot of long-term leases. Early on, took me not early, maybe like 3 years in, I started doing all 5, 7, 10-year leases on all these tenants. Housing authority only allows you to do 1 year on the HAP agreement, but the tenant agreement between you and the tenant, you can put for as long as you want. And the big benefit there is, if a tenant leaves, they're poor, they're judgment proof. You can't get money out of a rock, right? So I knew that it wasn't really worth that much, but I knew that if I ever went to sell my portfolio to an institutional investor, if I said, hey, I have 800 tenants that are all on 7 and 10-year leases, it's way more attractive. But in reality, it's just like, okay, if they decide to leave, you're not going to do anything about it. And Section 8 is just going to stop paying you, 2 to 3 months later. So there was a lot of things that I just figured out that I just doubled down on, and it just worked out.
What's the biggest headache of dealing with Section 8?
Biggest headache, I would say early on, before we really cracked it, it'd probably just be the tenants, because I wasn't patient enough to wait for the right tenants. I didn't know how to screen the tenants. And you get some of these tenants that are literally professional tenants. They know the law. They know what they can and can't do. They know that if they stop paying you and they have mail going to you, they can now consider a resident of the property. So you have to physically evict them. They know what to say to the judge, in order to avoid or prolong that. So I've just made it my life's work to basically figure out how to filter shitty tenants. But I would say that's the biggest downside. Besides that, there's never-ending supply of Section 8 tenants. I mean, there's so many people below the poverty line, so the tenant demand was never a problem. There's hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of properties under 100K in the U.S., so supply is not a problem. But yeah, I would say it was just the tenant quality, because they do suck. I mean, there are way more shitty low-income tenants than regular Airbnb or like middle-of-the-road properties that BlackRock would buy. So that's the main downside.
So, I mean, it sounds awesome to me what you're doing because you're generating a crazy amount of cash flow. Do you look at every other real estate strategy and be like, why would anyone do anything else other than this? Or do you see other real estate strategies that you're like, oh, that makes sense, I like that too, but I'm just in my lane?
Man, I think every other real estate strategy works great until we have an 08, until we have another pandemic, until, any of their shit goes down. Like during the pandemic, 2020 happened on my birthday in March 2020. The pandemic was declared and people start getting furloughed, people start getting laid off, people just stopped being able to pay their rent. And the people that were holding those properties had to pay the mortgage. So they just ended up in, I was chilling. Like I had the best year ever because, like I said, the vacancy was almost nothing. People couldn't go anywhere. People were panic selling their properties left and right. Interest rates were super low. So I was able to buy a bunch of properties. So I just looked like a genius coming out of that. Whereas, people with Airbnbs are in foreclosure, losing properties, or having to catch up on, their mortgage agreements that they had with the bank. It just became like a huge nightmare and stressful situation for those people. So yeah, I see every other investment strategy as, okay, you're going to go do the BRRRR strategy. It's going to take you months to refinance and remodel that property. Okay, you're going to do the Airbnb strategy. Okay, now you have to buy a much more expensive property and you have to furnish it and you have to deal with the wear and tear and the higher management fees. Okay, you're going to do a fix and flip. Congratulations. Now you bought yourself a full-time job that you can't quit, and you have to hope that the carrying costs and the markets don't shift between flips. Like you're constantly looking for new deals. All of these strategies in my mind are just like for the fucking birds.
So you'd probably hate what we're doing. I started out similar to you where I was like house hacking, doing whatever. I was just going for cash flow, trying to cover my living expense. And then I met this guy, Paul, who was one of our partners. He passed not too long ago at 75, but he built like a $500 million portfolio. And he did it through, he didn't care about cash flow. He was just like, how much equity can I force? How do I cash out refinance? And I saw he had like a 250 million net worth. And then I just pivoted to that. I had no balance. I went really aggressive into that to where I just didn't care about cash flow, which caused me a lot of problems. And I went into like 300 grand of like credit card debt when I was like 24, 25 doing that. But I just saw how much wealth he could build through that. And now we do a little more conservative than what I started with, but we're doing like 50 plus unit projects, and we're essentially trying to value add, recapitalize, and just hold long term. So when you see something like that, you're like, why would you even bother?
Well, no, I mean, I think that you're just taking a different approach. I mean, the long-term net worth play is great. I think that you can do both. I focus on cash flow and naturally forcing appreciation through those higher rent rolls, because eventually if I were to sell to institutional buyers right now, I'm not going to get the appreciation that you're going to get on brand new builds like you're getting, and forcing appreciation through remodeling and having, nicer units. I definitely won't get that. But I also won't lose sleep over $300,000 in credit card debt, right? So, and for me, it's always, you cannot go buy that Pershing with, potential appreciation.
Yeah.
It's all cash flow. So for me, it was lifestyle design. I think that more than likely over the long term, you'll definitely be richer than me, which is awesome. Assuming everything goes right, assuming we don't have another 08, assuming, that things continue on the current trajectory. But yeah, I think it's just different strategies. For me, I just like the predictability of it, because I've been sold on every commercial triple net lease. I don't want to have to deal with, failing small businesses left and right. I don't want to have to deal with, very small cap rates that these, Publixes and Targets are going to pay you. I think that there's obviously way more money in it long term, but people are always going to need a roof over their head, and the government's always going to pay for it. So that's always been my strategy.
Yeah, because how old are you now?
37.
Yeah, it's way cooler to have a yacht at 37 than it is at 80.
That's also part of it too. A lot of it does take a lot more time when you go the appreciation route. 'Cause I mean, it's not 20% per year. It's 3 to 5. So, and then the only way you can really liquidate that is you either sell it and have a huge capital gain, or you do a 1031 and then you don't get any cash out of it, or you refinance it and then you just have more debt that you're gonna hopefully die before it's due, or have to let that keep rolling on. But yeah, I mean, it's just different approaches.
You are human. Is there anything that keeps you up at night?
Man, there's no non-douchey way of saying it. I really design my life in a way where it's as little stress as possible. I think even the bad things that happen in my portfolio don't really affect me because I've already gone through it so many times. I mean, obviously everyone has personal problems like, family dynamics and friends and girlfriends and stuff. I wouldn't really say that keeps me up at night, but stress from the financial and professional side of my life, not really. We've been able to kind of come up with SOPs for everything that could happen. Someone gets killed on my property, call this person. If the hurricane knocks down this property, call this person. Almost any natural or non-natural disaster that happens in one of my properties, I will benefit from. As shitty as that sounds, that's just the reality of it.
No, that makes sense. I guess that was kind of where I was going to lead to, is low stress in my mind means that somehow over the last 9 years, you built it out so you are no longer the key man. Do you think that that's true? Like how hard would it be for you to teach somebody to come in and do exactly what you're doing right now? Or like if you died, what would happen?
I mean, I've already done this with my parents in the event that I did, kick the bucket tomorrow or had, some major event that prevented me from running it. I could teach any three of you in a day how to do it. I mean, I have this morning at 9 a.m. Every Friday morning I had a meeting with my property managers. We went over all the issues. They're all empowered up to $5,000. They can fix problems without me, so I almost never get any phone calls from them. I only really hear from them if there's a major insurance claim, if there's some major structural issue wrong with the property, if somebody died in the property, or if the police are involved. And they'll give me an update. I let them all talk to each other, bring up what's worked, what hasn't worked for them on, updated things. We'll look at software, make sure everything's running smoothly there. But the acquisition side of things, I've removed myself as well. Like all my real estate agents have all my limited power of attorney. They know my buy box. They know the stuff that I look for in a due diligence. They go out, they find the property, they put it under contract. They get the due diligence done on it. They get the inspection report. They'll look at it. They'll send it to my title company. My title company and my closing attorney, they have my limited power of attorney. They have access to my deposit account. They'll go ahead, send me a text with the deal and the numbers. I'll give them a thumb up reaction. They'll close on it, give the key to my property manager, and then they go manage it. So the acquisition side of it's streamlined to the point where it's less than 5 minutes of my involvement because I've trusted these people over the last 9 years.
How long have you been with these people?
Some of them have been since the beginning, like in North Carolina. I have some OG real estate agents that, I've basically made rich because they bought hundreds of units from me there. And then they also buy and sell them for me. So I have a lot of trust with them. And then the new ones, like if I'm buying in Ohio, after a year, it's generally enough time for me to trust them. And they can put the property under contract under my LLC. They have my, limited power of attorney. The only difference is the closing attorney, I might not put 10 million in account. I might put 2 million. So, they're signers on there as well. So they can sign and they can fund the deals for me as well. We buy it cash. When the account's, depleted, they'll text me, I'll wire more funds in there and they'll just keep buying. And of course there's some oversight. Like I said, I'm looking at the deals, I'm looking at the numbers, but after a certain point, these aren't houses anymore. They're numbers on a spreadsheet that just work out. That's the big benefit of Section 8 is because the rents are so much above market rent that it's very hard to fuck up. Even if you were to finance these things at 8% or 10% hard money, I mean, if the rent's $1,700 a month and you're getting $200 per month in luxury amenities from ceiling fans and storm doors and washer and dryers, it's very difficult to fuck up $1,900 a month in total gross rents. Especially when you're buying cash, like I am right now. But even before I was buying cash, they would still be able to go sign on financing documents for me. They would, set up the debt. They would send me the terms, and we just close on it.
And then the beauty of this, of not having debt, you go into those things that keep people up at night that you alluded to, like a fire or a tornado. Like, play that out. So if that happens, you get a total loss on the property. You have insurance. You don't have any debt to pay off. You don't have to rebuild the property. You just go buy a different one, right? Like, if that were to happen, Go ahead.
Yeah. We do it even crazier. So, property, So we get replacement cost insurance on all the properties, and generally we do it as a big umbrella policy for the entire portfolio, and they'll do it on a state level, right? So insurance companies are just lazy as fuck. They're not doing individual inspections on all the properties. They'll sample, a percentage of it, and then they'll just give you a total insured value. So that happened in North Carolina during Hurricane Helen, I believe, or Helena or something. I can't remember. This is in 2018, 2017. And we had a bunch of big properties that had replacement cost coverage that got wrecked. And tenants were displaced, and this was my first big natural disaster. And I was like, man, also I had a partner at the time on these deals. And he was like, no, like, this is going to be fine. Call this guy. He called him the Black Wizard. His name's Greg. Greg's a fucking, he's a killer. He's a public adjuster. He specializes in hurricanes. He goes to all during the hurricane seasons, like down to, and tornadoes. He focuses on that. So I call Greg, funniest dude you'll ever meet. And his name's Greg Webb, if y'all want to go look his ass up. And what he does is he'll go into the property and he'll bring in a whole team. The first time I met with him at some of these properties, he had a structural engineer. He had someone that was coming in to check all the moisture readings. He had like 4 or 5 guys with him. And we went through every property, and he was like, hey, this property, what'd you buy it for? And I was like, I don't know. It's part of a bigger portfolio. He's like, what would you put the value at? And I was like, I don't know, 120. He's like, nah, 185. I said, where do you get 185 from?
Cost new, baby. Replacement.
That's going to be yeah. So we would go through it, and he's like, this house was built in 1918. Back then, they used plaster, pairs of plaster on the wall, so it's all masonry products. So you don't want to go back with sheetrock, right? You want to go back with masonry. And I was like, yeah, I want to go back with masonry. This bitch is a 3,500 square foot duplex. You know the math, the difference between sheetrock and masonry products? I was like, nope. He's like, it's like 5X. And I was like, all right. He's like, oh, you see that? This, these appliances and fixtures. Oh, by the way, you have lost rent, right? And I was like, yeah. He's like, yeah, you're going to get, at least annual lease paid out on that lost rent because you have diminished value. I mean, everything comes into play. And I was like, ain't no way. And he just takes 10% of whatever he gets for you. So sure enough, the insurance company's adjuster comes out. They're like, oh, we're going to go back with this, and this. And he was like, no. We're going to do it this way. And then the first time we had some back and forth, and the guys were just like, we're not going to pay that. And he's like, that's fine. Let's go ahead and go into mediation. Then eventually we'll go into litigation, and then we can just, settle at the original number anyways. Sure enough, they got the 180 some thousand. And I was like, motherfucker. But then it got better. So then instead of going back and taking that 180 to go fix it, we took that property that was worth at the time maybe $50,000 in land value, and I sold the land to a flipper that wanted to rebuild on it. So we got 180 minus I paid him $18K on the 180 that I got. So we were at like 162, and then I got another $50,000 for selling the land and the underlying asset below it. So I was damn near $250,000 on a property that, as part of the whole thing, is barely worth 100 and some thousand. So we went out and bought like 5 more houses with that $250,000 other financing and DSCR. So that's why I say, as far as like when you get the right team and the right people and you know what you're doing, like every disaster in real estate can turn into something super profitable.
Dang, that's crazy.
so wild.
So can you speak to these other things you're doing too, like your AI with property management, your coaching, your software for finding deals and all that stuff?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, a few years ago, I started talking about Section 8 on TikTok. I never had a following. I was been a nobody on social media my entire life. And then TikTok came out, dropped some funny videos on there, and then they got millions of views. I gave my dad a car. He got really emotional, so I got millions of views. I got like 30,000 followers overnight. And then I was like, wow, I have a whole camera roll of stuff of getting like, that I can start putting on TikTok that actually gets reach. And then I grew that just organically. And then people started asking me about real estate, how did I get rich, blah, blah, blah. So then I started explaining how I did it, basically what I'm telling you guys here, but just in short form. And then from there, I got onto Instagram, got a lot more followers on Instagram. And then eventually I came out with the course. The course I did for maybe like a year and a half. I didn't like video courses at all because everyone's at different levels and starting points. So courses just felt like it wasn't really helping as many people. So then I came out with a software so people could actually find properties on their own. And then AI in 2024 became really more popular. So I started implementing AI. And then eventually I came out with my property management software because I just needed it in my own portfolio. And then eventually I came out with I just do mentorship now. So I don't even have a course. I just, have my software platform. And then if you want help from me individually, I'll help you one-on-one.
Okay.
But yeah, that's kind of how it's evolved over the last several years.
Yeah, I remember seeing one of your videos where I think it was around Christmas time, you just paid all your tenants rent or something.
Yeah.
Did any of them say thank you when you did that?
Yeah, I mean, a certain segment of them, but the vast majority of my tenants are Section 8. I also do have nuns as well. I have 75 nuns in 2 states. But
Catholic? No, like nuns?
Yeah, Catholic nuns. I have two I call them nunneries. I think they're convents, but and that just happened through a freak. Like someone through the Department of Health and Human Services in North Carolina was friends with someone at the Archdiocese for the Catholic Church in North Carolina, and they had too many nuns and not enough
nunneries.
Nunneries. So they asked me if I would house them, and I was like, well, how does it work? Because I'd never housed anybody of the faith before for any religion. And they're like, well, we just pay a flat rate. It's per nun. And there's no inspections, there's no nothing. We'll sign a 5-year lease for every nun, and we'll basically guarantee a renewal. And I was like, yeah, let's do that. Like, I'll take all of your nuns. So I ended up buying a bunch of properties to accommodate them. And nun housing is, I always say that I don't have a separation between church and state. I'll house all those fuckers. So that's just what we've done.
That's wild.
And they're hardcore. Yeah, I mean, they self-manage themselves. So like, if there's any problems with a nun, the church deals with them. We've had several nun evictions. One of them ended up getting excommunicated from the church. So like, they don't play any games. Like it's the least headache of anything we deal with. And I just have one person that handles all the nuns. But yeah.
Of some of the people that have taken your coaching and courses and stuff, like what have you seen some of them do? Have they been able to replicate to the scale you have at all, or what does it look like?
I mean, no one's gotten to 800 plus properties in 2 years, or I guess really almost 3 years now. I have students that have hundreds of properties. I think my number one student is probably a little under 500 units. Some of them started with 50 or 100K. A lot of them also had businesses that they just sold, and they wanted to be able to park that money and have tax advantages and also have predictable cash flow. I've had people that started with very little money and they just raised a bunch of money and were able to get into deals like that. So everyone's on different trajectory. It really just comes down to how creative you are and how big your balls are, really. I mean, like how much risk you're willing to take on, because I see that the people that are most successful are the ones that aren't scared of debt, are the ones that can kind of see the cash flow and that are willing to like follow my like screening guidelines on tenants. So that's really the most successful ones.
If you were back to zero today, how long do you think it would take you to get to the 10K a month of cash flow?
Oh, 10K?
With zero. You got nothing.
With zero.
You have all the knowledge you have, though.
I would say probably, 18 months.
Okay.
Maybe I would say maybe a little bit faster. I would say I would get there through wholesaling way faster. I would just do as many wholesale deals as I possibly could. I don't know, it depends on like if I have a car, where I'm at, but obviously there's a lot of specifics there. But to answer your question, yeah, I would still wholesale early on, build a bankroll through that, try to get into as many seller finance deals, basically replicate what I did now, but skip out the condos, Airbnbs, and all the other shit. I think that I could potentially get there faster if I went straight to, raising other people's money. I think that becomes a lot more of an uphill battle when you don't have any skin in the game yourself and you don't have any proof that it works. So that's the only reason I would give myself that much time, is because I would want to buy at least a few properties, and starting with zero is an uphill battle, especially if I didn't have a job or any other source of income. And the only way I was depending on it was on wholesaling. But yeah, I think in that a year and a half, I would be at 10,000 per month.
Dude, I love that no bullshit answer.
Yeah,
I really
I know.
love that.
I thought you were going to be like 6 months. I was like, that's it. No, that's the, I like that.
I mean, And like I said, if you got lucky and you got some big seller finance deal and you were able to get hard money in the second position and you did all this exotic shit and then you had no money in reserves and like, yes, it's possible, but realistically it would take, a year plus to get it done.
So do you think going from, because like I don't really know the scale of all of it, but in your mind it's like the hardest part is probably 0 to 10K, and then getting from like 10K to 50K a month. Like, do you think that phase would be easier for you now? Like knowing what you know, if you were at 10K a month, it would take less time to get to like 50K just because you had the track record and some cash flow already?
Yeah. I would think that the hardest part would be to get from probably 100K to 500,000. I mean, that 5X growth requires a lot of creative financing. I think up to 100,000, a lot of that can be done, just kind of scratching, crawling, and really grinding your way to 100K. But even with the cash flow at 100,000, being able to 5X that requires outside funding. It requires, talking to the right people, networking, even probably sooner than 100,000. I mean, realistically. But yeah, if I were to do it all over again, I wouldn't make any of the same mistakes. I wouldn't choose the wrong property managers. I wouldn't choose the wrong properties. I wouldn't choose the wrong tenants. So all of that time gets compressed because now I'm able to work a lot more efficiently and, smarter. And I think I could be in this exact same position at 1.3 in 5 or 6 years instead of 9.
Yeah, I think it was before we started. You mentioned if you were to sell your stuff, you would piece it off at like 10 a year or whatever. Why would you not just 10 a month? Why would you not just sell the whole portfolio? Because wouldn't a bigger institution just pay you a higher multiple on all those too?
You're never going to make more money than taking off the head of a first-time home buyer that comes in unrepresented without an agent.
Jesus.
Yeah.
And there's no reason to. Yeah.
Doing it slowly would also limit my annual, tax exposure. I wouldn't have one big hit. I wouldn't have to do a 1031. And these idiots just come in, and they think my listing agent's their best friend. He'll represent them as dual agency because it's allowed in a lot of these states. And then it's just a bloodbath. I mean, they'll pay whatever. They don't do inspections. So many people now with all the new NAR guidelines as far as paying their buyer's agents, they don't want to do that. So we have a lot of people that'll just make offers to my property managers. They'll be walking by, and with their baby carriage and their yoga pants, and they like the house because then it's in an up and coming area. And then, a house that I've offered 65, 70K, they're like, oh, we love the neighborhood, 225.
It's the gentrifiers. You gotta love the gentrifiers, yeah.
Yeah. And it's always without an agent. So it would definitely be slower. It would take, probably years to get rid of, 900 or 1,000 units or whatever I decided to sell. But I think that the big advantage to that would be just a lot more net profit. Even if I had these things at 3,000 a month on average, which obviously is not possible, these institutional clowns are still going to want to, cut your throat and try to get a huge, bulk discount for buying that many properties. And I would just never do that.
Yeah. What do you think? I guess speaking to the first time home buyer, and you're talking to like way lower cap rates on single family, quote unquote, when you're selling to a first time home buyer. So what do you think your actual like return on equity is now because of how much they've appreciated since you've bought them?
I mean, it's tens of X's. Like I said, on the initial deals that I've been buying, I was putting, on an average seller finance deal, I was probably putting 10% down. So 7K on a 70K property, maybe 14 if I was doing DSCR, if I was doing like a credit union or a small local portfolio loan. So if you're talking return on the actual investment, which is obviously way less than the actual purchase price, I mean, it's astronomical. It's super high.
Yeah. But what about based on the current values, like the equity you have in the properties? And then relative to the cash flow, like, do you think you could get a higher return on equity elsewhere, but you just don't want to because you know the game so well? Does that make sense? Like if you had whatever, you know what I mean?
Are you talking about if I were to sell it in what?
Yeah, based on how much equity you have now.
No, just in general, I doubt there's any way you can find a better return on equity. So with your entire 821 homes free and clear, your return on equity is X, but you're in high cash flow markets, and on top of that you're getting ancillary charges, so your return on equity has to be ridiculously large, in the double digit range, I would imagine, if not more.
Yeah, I mean, cash on cash return when I had debt financing was 35 to 40%. So, I mean, without debt, you can figure that is significantly higher, right? So, as far as return on equity, if I were to start selling properties, there's no higher return that I would get. The reason why I haven't done that is because I just don't know what I would do with the money. Like, I just have no other better alternative. I still get depreciation on these properties. I still have taxable benefits. I still, I'm able to create content around simply possessing these units. And it's predictable, it's stable. So I have very little incentive. Somebody would have to either bring me a massive number, or I would have to just, start selling them individually.
How has growing on the internet and having more of a following and making more money changed who you hang out with and who you network with?
I'm pretty much a loner in general. I really don't network. I have no need for partners or anyone on the commercial side. I have friends still from North Carolina, and the friends that I've made here in Miami, which are probably less than 10 that I actually consistently hang out with. I would say social media definitely opens up more opportunities to make more money, which I think is great. But as far as actual friends and like personal relationships, it's maybe 2 or 3 people that I've like actually met and like actually became friends with. I use social media as a promotional tool, and that's really about it.
Do you find that your friends are all doing like different businesses and stuff like you, or what kind of people do you connect with now?
They're all over. I mean, I have OG friends from college that are mortgage brokers and accountants, and I have friends here that are influencers and selling peptides. So it's it really runs the gamut of the types of friends that I have. I have friends that are in SaaS. I have friends that are unemployed. I still have some straight up bum friends, that will come to Miami and we'll just go party for a week. I have friends that are super rich. They're in the info space, or they are, in some other types of creative space. I have friends that are artists. So it really just varies. But actual like close friends that I hang out with weekly or daily, it's like I said, less than 10.
Yeah. Sweet. Well, do you guys have any more questions?
We can wrap this one up.
Sweet. Well, if people want to get coaching from you or connect with any of your softwares, how can they find all that?
Yeah, if you want a free trial to my Section 8 Pro Deal Finder, or if you also want to join my free workshop, you can just go to tomcruz.com, TOMCRUZ.com, or you can just find me on Instagram or TikTok. It's at TCruzNC, like North Carolina.
I love it. Yeah, we'll put the links in the description as well, and then we'll send you all this stuff. But we really appreciate you coming on. This has been a ton of fun, dude. Yeah, you're a monster.
Awesome, man.
This gets us fired up. Yeah, of course.
Good.
It's so fun. Well, good deal. Deal Junkies, thanks for listening, and we will see you next time.